Hey folks, this is Mark Smith with Family Tree Brand Life Coaches. I am really sorry that I am running so late this evening. I've had a bit of a rough day. I had technology issues all day long. I couldn't get Skype to work, and I've been hi, Diana. I've been uh, just seeing clients via my phone, and it's been a long, hard day. Hi, Cynthia. Um, I'm gonna uh, be a little bit challenged even further when it comes to. I don't have anybody to serve up the questions for me. And now I can't get this to work. I've had technology issues all day long. Okay. So I'm going to keep an eye on the channel. And hey, Smooth and Chunky, for questions. And but actually, what I'm going to do, hey Soren, is I have a little presentation for you. Um, and so, why don't we hold off on questions until towards the end? And my wife encouraged me, instead of just ad libbing everything. Hey, Carol, I appreciate it. She suggested I come prepared with a topic. Jerry Wise, when he presents, he always comes prepared with a topic. So I'm just going to share some things. I always wait for inspiration. That's part of why I haven't come prepared, but I've got a little bit of inspiration to share with you. So save your questions toward the end. Talk amongst yourselves. Feel free to do that. And don't be offended if I'm not answering questions. But I will have a time at the end for you to be able to answer questions. So here's my partner Steve is leaving the building. So hey, Kimberly Blair, how you doing? Welcome, welcome. So here's the topic that we're going to be, and it's a bit of a heavy topic, a bit of a serious topic, and I think the other issue, Gilligan, hey, the other issue folks were having with me is my goofballness, and I think the the thinking was the combination between Jerry's brilliant family systems individuation work and Renda's refreshing life coaching and energy work mixed in with a little bit of Mark and goofiness. Hey, Jackie. Jackie didn't get a notification? I wonder why. Makes for a good community and a good combination. Kelly Wood's in the house. Hey, Kelly Wood. Long time no see. It's good to have you on the show with your wrench. So, I'm hoping to share tonight without any technical difficulties. I would say if I had technical difficulties, I would pull my hair out, but that would be a little rough to pull my hair out. So, so here's the topic for tonight: healing your original core wound. Jackie says there would be no family tree without Mark. This is true. This is true. So, healing your original core wound. So, again, save your questions toward the end. Now, I realize, see you, Steve, that we all have a lot of wounds. We don't just have one. Wouldn't it be cool if we just had one core wound? That'd be bad enough, but I realize that we have a whole bunch of wounds, but I'm talking about your biggie. I'm talking about your biggest, deepest, most gaping, bloody, emotional wound that you've got. Do you know what it is? Whatever flavor that takes, for us folks, it's sprinkled with complex PTSD. The wound itself may not be complex PTSD. It might be abandonment or shame, or it could be a lot of different things. But it's interspersed with complex PTSD. Gilligan says she knows hers. It's crushing loneliness, the feeling of not belonging. So that would be that sounds like being a lost child, and lost child pain is difficult pain. That's for sure. So one of the really Tiffany says we love Mark's goofiness. You're probably not going to get a lot of goofiness tonight, but we'll see. God only knows what will come out of my mouth. One of the really coolest things about couple work is I'll be working with a couple and they check in and they're at each other's throats, and they're both projecting onto the other person. And from my vantage point as a therapist, having their family tree in front of them, I know what their core issue is. I know what their original wound is. And it's really sad. It's like one person's original wound is triggering the other person's original wound. And what I try to do is I try to create an environment where it's safe to be vulnerable with your original wound and show your partner the little kid. And many times, the little kid will even show up unbidden. And you can just see the little kid in their eyes. And you can, and then they start to cry. And there's just a sweetness and a drawing toward that person, and the whole energy in the room changes. And instead of being adversarial, it's couples holding each other, couples wiping each other's tears. One of the really most loving, most beautiful thing about my wife, Renda, is when the little boy comes out, she wipes the tears right out of my eyes. I have a great wife. She is just the most loving being I've ever come across, let me tell you. So the couple part was a little side track. I don't know how many of you are in relationships. it seems like most of you aren't, because most of you are sort of licking your wounds from interactions with, um, uh, bad actors, and it may not be time, to be in a relationship. So, I've got 20 points that I wanted to share, and I'm on number 5. So, uh, what I want to say to you guys is, it doesn't matter what caused uh, your complex PTSD. It's a condition that you have to manage for the rest of your life. Uh, there are certain injuries that football players are prone to. It seems like my Dallas Cowboys, uh, some of our best players, they're always pulling their hamstrings. They're running fast, trying to cover somebody, and boom, they blow a tire, and they're out 6 weeks, and then they come back, and that's an injury. Hey, Sarah. Hey, Chris from the UK. Um, that's an injury that's very prone. Uh, Siri just turned on for some unknown reason. It's very easy to re-injure a hamstring, and I think all of you know that it's very easy to re-injure your trauma. Whatever trauma that you experienced in your family of origin originally, and whatever trauma that then you re experienced, perhaps with narcissistic abuse, or some other type of trauma, it's easy to re injure things and have stuff come back up. Um, I like to think of our work as being seasonal. Um, you can uh, have a season. I had a season in January, February, and March where I was on fire with just blessing and thriving and energy and creativity. Sergio from Mexico City, welcome. Um, who is moderating this ATM? Um, uh, there are several people with wrenches, um, including my wife. Hi, honey. She's just popping in to say hi. She's got another client meeting yet tonight that she has. Yeah, so anybody with a wrench is moderating. But I've warned people that I might miss um, some questions until we put them till later. I got to tell you, Brenda is thriving like never before. She's marketing with gusto. She smiles a lot. She's filled with love. She is given tremendous energy to her client. I'm so proud of her. I'm so proud of what she's doing. So, there are seasons um, in this recovery process where we thrive, and there are seasons when we don't thrive so much. Have you noticed that? I think Renda's in a thriving season, and I'm in a what happens is our unconscious recognizes that we're in a strong and healthy place, and then says, we're going to send up another load of unresolved childhood trauma that needs to be healed. And it's really not a lot of fun, I got to tell you, but it is what it is. So I don't know if anybody else can relate to this. Having your core, your original wound, your deepest wound reopened to where what I've noticed is it's shocking how painful the pain is years later. So Matthew says that he can relate. Okay, so Warren Scott, I'm not sure if this is an interactive conversation or whatever, but if it is, I have a question. Do you know how narcissistic abuse would affect someone with high functioning autism? I'm going to write that down. What this is tonight is a presentation. Hi, Amy. Amy starts with a A. I can't say her last name. Accinelli. Is an associate with Renspire, and she works for Renda. So narc pain for somebody with autism. So I'll come back to that, but we're in the middle, sort of in the middle of healing your original core wound. Soren says, it's the weirdest thing. The pain stays away for a while, and then it comes back with a vengeance. So that's what I'm talking about. The pain stays away for a while, and it comes back with a vengeance. I had forgotten how bad narcissistic abuse and complex PTSD feel, because I hadn't felt this much pain in probably a couple of years. But I'm telling you, folks, it's part of the gig. It's part of the process. Our channel has always been based on authenticity and vulnerability. And I just want to share with you folks that even minor YouTube gurus like myself, it's possible to get re-injured and to have the pain come back. Carol says it's pain like nothing you've ever had before. So, so I guess what I'm saying is there's a in the minor guru business, that there's a sense of wanting to have your stuff together and put on a happy face and always talk about the positive, thriving stuff. And if that's where I'm at, that's what I'll share. But I'm telling you that this process is a marathon, and healing your original core wound is a lifelong process. It's not something that you can sign up and listen to audio tapes and do some therapy, talk therapy, and put it behind you forever and ever. Jilligan says part of her pain is terrible dreams and nightmares. When you're in a season of healing the wounded child, frequently you will involve yourself. You will have a lot of really intense nightmares, and I don't really. I'll be honest with you. I don't call them nightmares. I call them your unconscious talking to you. And when I've been in this, it's been about 2.5 weeks. But since I've been in this season of inner child core wound healing, I've had very powerful, vivid, painful, scary dreams. Write those down and make your therapist stay and bring them into your therapist and share those with your therapist. So I think what happens is, you got to function, and we all have what Jackson McKenzie calls our protective self. By the way, if folks haven't read Jackson McKenzie's new book, Whole Again, I would really recommend it, because it's about continued healing, continued daily practice of self-care and medication, meditation, not medication. And Jackson McKenzie, he talks about we all have this protective self around us, and thank goodness we get a break from the pain. Thank goodness that we don't have to walk around miserable for all the time. That there is a time where it's like the pain slows down, and we get some joy. We get a season of joy. We get a season of peace. We get a season of having energy. So, but from the protection of the protective self, there's times when the universe or a lack of self-care can open up that gaping, bleeding original core wound, and it feels sort of like you've relapsed or you've fallen back, and you really haven't. I'm working with an energy worker out of Australia named Zephy Jolly, and I'm killing her name probably. What did Jackie just say? It seems like Jackie just said something. I missed it, Jackie. I'm sorry. Oh, there it is. Mark, I put some of your advice into action this week. I noticed I felt so free after speaking how I feel instead of letting it eat at me. I think I've gained respect from this person that she shared with. Cool. So, sometimes people have cancer and they go through an extensive bit of treatment, and they have surgery, and they have chemotherapy and radiation, and then they're cancer free. But a couple years later, they might do a test, and the cancer has come back. And our condition is sort of like cancer, it can come back on us. Carol says she's been binging on Mark's videos for several days. Thank God I found him. I'm ready for active healing beyond info gathering. That's cool. That's really cool. So, what I encourage people to do is lean into your pain. I was telling Renda that I think when you first get go through narcissistic abuse, or at least in my case, it's like there was a fierceness of fighting. There was a courage. Somewhere on here, there's the word courage tattooed to my arm, just so I always remember. And if you survive trauma, if you survive complex PTSD and narcissistic abuse, you're a hero. You're a very strong person. You're somebody who has a tremendous amount of courage. But sometimes when the little boy or the little girl surfaces, it doesn't always automatically bring the courage with it, and it's something that you have to. It's something that you have to sort of redevelop, and you need to sort of rebuild your emotional support system. I'm really leaning into Renda, and like I said, I'm doing this work with Zephy from Australia. Really cool energy work using the phone. It's like she's in my ear and helping me do body work. It's powerful work. I've never done energy work or used my imagination so much. And then I reconnected with my local therapist here in Indianapolis, and I'm leaning into our family tree community just a little bit more here. So something that I want to put a name to, and if you've watched a lot of my videos, you've heard this phrase before, and it's called deep processing. Deep processing is that the wave of emotion that comes from your gut that surfaces and pours out of your eyes. It's energy that is healing. One of the main ways God made us to heal is to weep. I mean, weep. I mean, curled up in a fetal ball, weeping. One of the things that happens when I shift from Mark Smith therapist or Mark Smith the man is, and I'm in Renda's arms and she's wiping my tears, it's my voice changes. And it's like the wounded little kid has a different voice than the adult. Jilligan says, it's been a while since I've cried hard like that. Carol says, it's like King David in the Psalms. So another thing that I'm learning is during a season of feeling and re-healing your original core wound, you can't really paste a mask on your face. It's like there's a fatigue, there's a sadness. April Grace says, I'm so glad I clicked onto this. Thank you, Mark. Godspeed. You really are courageous to keep doing what you do in spite of your current struggles. This was encouraging. I hope to listen more later. Thank you. Thank you. J.P. Bailey, body and energy healing really made a huge difference. Okay. So, in working with this body worker, Jackie, we're not going to retire Fernando the rubber chicken forever. I promise. Fernando is in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, and I promise that he will be a guest on our show many times in the future. So just a heavier topic tonight. So one of the symptoms of my PTSD, I don't know how many people suffer from brain fog. Chris is just hearing about the rubber chicken. How many of you suffer from brain fog? It's not a pleasant thing. It's where you try to think, and you have work to do, and you have things to accomplish, and your mind is just so fuzzy. Jackie says she gets brain fog, and it's a sad and overwhelming feeling. It's like a healthy brain, a quick brain, is such a gift when things are working well. Denise says, I have brain fog and low motivation. Low motivation and brain fog sort of go together. Jilligan says, oh man, my brain is fogged all the way up. Me, no good brain, no mo. So, you guys are discussing the frozen, or not the frozen, but the rubber chicken. Kimberly Blair, I do have brain fog, and it's worse when I'm tired or overly stressed. Yeah, so that's part of re-injuring your PTSD is when you get really tired and when you get really stressed. I was thriving and kicking butt and taking names and having joy and making videos and getting new clients, and I thought that I could cram a bunch of trips all together and drive halfway across the country on no sleep, and then I re-injured myself. I pulled a hammy psychologically. And pulling a hammy is, we have a comment about mad cow disease. I don't know if that exactly fits our discussion here. So I'm just saying that it's an honor to greet back the wounded little kid. It's not that you failed. It's not that you have relapsed in a bad way. It's you get another opportunity to heal the very core of you. JP says, brain fog is like trying to think through quicksand. That's perfect analogy, JP. But also feelings like suddenly feeling less than. So What? Let's talk about what your original core wound is, okay? Because I think it's different from for everybody. Uh, my core wound goes back to even before I was born. I was induced. A lot of you know my story. I was shoved out of the womb unceremoniously, and it put me in a rage. I was so not ready to come out, and I screamed like only babies can scream until I turned purple. And I later heard from my mother that she was so fatigued and sick from gallbladder surgery that she would sit me out in the backyard and just let me scream bloody murdered. So that's and then I never bonded with her, and a year later she's snuggling the perfect blue-eyed baby boy. So my original core wound has to do with being horribly, wickedly, violently abandoned by my mother, and then having her take that love and give it to another male, which I managed to reenact that in my relationship with somebody who was borderline. Kelly says, with brain fog, do you forget words and can't get out what you want to say? Yes, Kelly, that's exactly a description of brain fog. Sometimes it's like I know somebody's name and I've got to Google them to figure it out. So Jeffrey says that story makes me cry. It's a sad thing. All of us who were abandoned in infancy. Uh, it's bad to be abandoned in childhood, but I think it's especially traumatic and wounding when it happens when you're an infant. So I'm back on my program of meditation, exercise, massage, self care. I'm reading Jackson Mackenzie's book Whole Again, and you probably won't see a lot of videos from me until until I do a little bit more healing. But just understand that you may be going along and be in a really good place, but don't be surprised if Mother Nature deems you worthy and strong enough to face off with another big chunk of healing. Sarah says, I'm a trooper. I don't feel like a trooper. I feel like a sort of like a struggling little boy, actually. Tiffany says to Chris, the rejection abandonment is repetitive and seemingly planned to make me weak and easier to control. Jeffrey Sherman, I have that brain fog too. It takes me way too long to say things at times. The most painful thing for me with brain fog is if I have some paperwork to do, and I'll go and I'll sit at my desk, and I'll try to focus, and my brain goes from one thing to another thing to another thing to another thing, and then 4 hours later I've accomplished three small tasks. That is painful and frustrating. So what am I saying? I'm saying this process of healing takes time. I'm what is today, the 16th. I'm 10 days away from my 4th anniversary of my shattering. Understand too that if you get right in front of an anniversary date, don't be surprised if there's a resurgence of pain. Your unconscious knows what day it is. And even if you're not thinking about it much, your unconscious, whether it's the death of a parent, the death of a loved one, or your shattering, anniversary dates are important. Jackie says Mark and Renda are raw and real. They have come on her and helped so many people. Thank you, Mark and Renda and Jerry. Diana says, very good boundaries, Mark, because you need self-care right now, and we completely understand. Denise says, I was told that it's sometimes your brain that is trying to protect us from the truth. That's a really good description of psychological defense mechanisms. In a way, the protective self. It's stunning to me how we can be in our bodies and be about our business and seeing our therapist and being involved in recovery work and still have our minds sort of block out sort of what's really going on with us. It's just startling to me. So, well, that's mainly what I wanted to say is lean into the pain. Let the little girl cry her eyes out. Let the little boy cry his eyes out. Hopefully you have somebody there to wipe your tears away. I found it scary to cry alone. I don't know if it's easier to drink alone or cry alone. Probably drink alone. And then get your support system rebuilt up and make your recovery process a full-time job for a while. Those football players for the Dallas Cowboys, they get treatment every day on those pulled hammies. And they get back on the playing field and score touchdowns and make tackles eventually. But it takes some time on the sidelines. So let's open it up to questions. Who has some questions? It doesn't have to be on the topic tonight on healing your original core wound, but I want to also hear from people what is your core wound originally. Scooter 1 says, I've been rejected and humiliated all my life, which is my core wound. But with that one, and as I grow older, it remains open. The wound, it sounds like the wound remains opened. Being rejected and humiliated all his life. That's sad. Sergio says, brain fog. I suffer from it too. And when I'm listening to Mark's wisdom at the same time, I practice my English and therefore I exercise my brain. There are exercises for your brain. I haven't used them, but there are exercises for your brain that can help with brain fog. Absolutely. Gilligan, Mark, it might be close to your shattering, but look where you are now, and look how far you've come. When you get re-injured and the pain surfaces again, you sort of lose perspective. You don't realize how far you've come, and I don't suspect that this re-injury is gonna last forever. I think I'll be back on my feet and being myself again. That's the damnedest thing about complex PTSD. It robs you of yourself. You can't be you. In my work with Zephy the other day, we were talking about enthusiastic guy in me when I play basketball or when I'm in a session, and that there's an energy to enthusiasm that when you're in the middle of, I call it walking through the valley of the shadow of death, taken, I believe, from a psalm, Psalm 31, I believe, isn't it? Correct me. Walking through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thy rod and thy staff comfort me. I don't know about y'all, but when I'm in prayer or when I'm in pain, I go to praying. There's this old saying, there's not too many atheists in foxholes. Okay. Kimberly says one of her original wounds was she was supposed to be a boy, and then there was some rejection. Soren says, I'm getting close to when I met my last girlfriend, who was not good for me, and I'm getting depressed about it. So I get that anniversary. He's talking about the anniversary situation. Diana says, lately, if I get overwhelmed, I cry all over the place. That's what I'm talking about. It's okay to cry all over the place. One of my main messages is you heal by crying. And in our culture, I remember once I went and saw my family doctor, and I was crying, and that doctor couldn't usher me out of his office soon enough. He almost threw me out of the place. He did not know what to do with sadness. I was up and out of that office so quick, my head was spinning. And all I did was cry a little bit. It's a gift to be able to cry. It's a gift to be able to go deep into your emotional pain. You're not a freak. You're not crazy. It actually means that you're strong. Diana says, again, that she cries all over the place. I can't seem to control them, and I pray a lot till it ends. Praying a lot till the end is it's an awfully good thing to do. Chris has a question. My neighbor Dear John issue. Any thoughts? Chris, did I miss your question about the neighbor Dear John issue? Could you send it again? I think I missed it, and I can't go back right now and dig it up. Jackie says, why does the scent of men's cologne bring back a memory? Smells are very powerful triggers to trauma, and it's probably a specific cologne that's triggering a specific incident. I can't think of a smell that triggers me, but there probably are some. But if anybody can think of a smell that triggers them, let us know. Matthew says, my wound is the same, and that's eternal rejection. I thought he was going to say internal rejection, but it's eternal. And so, Matthew, no doubt you were rejected by at least one, if not both, of your parents. And then, unfortunately, the best opportunity to heal from the wounding of a abandonment in childhood is to, what do? We grow up and we fall in love with narcissists and sociopaths and borderlines and abandoners and sex addicts. Soren says, my core wound is the same as yours, Mark. My mother shook me, oh my God, and raged at me as an infant. Horrific abandonment. That's my wound. It manifests as intense and all-engulfing loneliness and at times rage. Soren, I knew I had a sort of a connection with you. When I went through my shattering, and that purple raging infant came to the surface, there was a lot of rage, man. I could have gotten into legal trouble, even though my personality is not to be a rager and it's not to hurt anybody. But and that's the difficult thing about narcissistic abuse and complex PTSD. Many times you'll do things terribly out of character that you've never done before, and then you're on the hook, then you're in trouble. My shelter is strong asks if anybody gets migraines as part of their symptomology of complex PTSD. Diana says rejection and humiliation are her core issues. She said she was at Target by my entire family. I was called deaf, dumb, and blind, and retard, and cockeyed. That breaks my heart, Diana, to be called those names. That's horrific. Gilligan says, complex PTSD robs you of yourself. It steals your time and it keeps you from enjoying the things that you like to do. Psalm 23, my bad. My bad. Thank you, Carol. When I was originally shattered, there really wasn't anything I liked to do. And when you get re injured, you sort of go through that again. So, my poor wife, we haven't been to a movie in a while. Even food doesn't appeal much to me when I'm in a season of deep processing that wounded little boy. Soren says he gets horrific headaches and he has to go to the chiropractor to snap his neck. It's the only way to release the pressure on my body. One of our new recovery practices is Renda and I got a membership to a walk-in chiropractic clinic, and you get 4 visits a month, and you just walk in. There's usually not much of a wait. It's called The Joint. And if any of you need chiropractic help, I highly recommend it. They're all over the country. There's one in Myrtle Beach, so we go there as well. Denise says, my core wound may be being born into the wrong family. Hey, I've got this belief that we're all born into the right families. To me, the meaning of life is life gives you lemons, then make some really good lemonade. I think that in order to be you, you have to go through this process. In order to bring gifts to the world that only you can bring, you have to go through this process. Okay, so then there's a lot of discussion about chiropractic, and that is part of recovery, I do believe. Kelly says, I'm so sorry for all you guys that have endured rejection and humiliation. You won't experience that here on this channel. Amen. We are hearing a lot of people sharing that they have experienced rejection and humiliation. And that's so sad. It's sad that that not only do you experience it as a child, but then we're wired to romantically pick people who love us in the same incomplete, really hurtful manner. I'm in my wife's office and I'm looking for a clock and I can't see one. So we're talking about crying here. Matthew says, what if you haven't been able to cry for over a decade? Matthew, I wish you a flood of tears. They're in there. You have a whole flood of tears in your heart and soul. And the reason that it hasn't come out is you don't feel safe. Thanks, Jackie. Jackie's on the ball at all times. We'll go for about another 15 minutes. Sarah says, I just hate crying in public. And she says she cries when she's really pissed off. Carol says, after discard 6 months ago, I tried not to cry at all. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to stop. You know how many times I've heard that phrase in my 32-year career as a therapist? I've heard that phrase hundreds of times. I didn't want to start crying because I was afraid that I would never stop. That's a powerful statement, but you know what? You'll stop. Dive into the deep end of the pool. Allow yourself to cry. Many times, clients come in and they'll cry just a little bit, and then they want to use words. I'm like, no, stay with the tears. We don't need words. I tell people this is the best therapy session I ever had. I showed up to the therapist's office. I took my shoes off, laid on the couch, and I sobbed from my belly for an hour straight. And then all she did was hand me tissue. She didn't say a single word to me. I just cried and sobbed and cried and sobbed and cried and sobbed. And then I got to a place of feeling a real sense of relief. This was a long time ago when you wrote checks to your therapist. Got up, wrote a check, left, and I swear the sun was shinier, the grass was greener, the sky was bluer, the air was fresher. It really makes a difference. Kelly says, I don't like crying in front of people because my mom said when I was younger that we can't have an argument because all she does is cry. So she was shamed for crying. Some of you are talking about being triggered by cigarette smoke from your parents. Kimberly mentioned liquor. Sometimes, occasionally, I'll have a beer. I don't drink very many beers, but occasionally I'll drink a beer. And then when I kiss my wife, then she gets triggered and she goes, dude, go brush your teeth and use some mouthwash and get rid of that because there were abusers in her background who drank beer. My shelter is strong. That says a lot about what's going on. My shelter is strong. Is that a reference to the Lord? I remember one of my first times I cried in ages was when I was 18, when this guy who was a friend of my sister sang songs about what he felt while playing the guitar. I cried with tears quietly. Music will loosen up some tears, that's for sure. If the words come from the heart. So my shelter is strong. Said that kind of crying is a release, and that's what I'm saying is that if you'll cry and cry and cry and cry and cry and cry, you'll get to the other side of it, and that isn't it's not a sign necessarily of weakness or depression. It's a sign of strength and courage. Soren says, absolutely, Mark, I'm the same way. Very much a good person, but my mother brings about homicidal rage in me. It's part of my brain that is intensely traumatized and pre-moral. That's an interesting comment. Soren, pre-moral. I think that's why when I was originally shattered, it was the baby, the raging infant in a man's body that was out there causing mischief. Um, I wondered if I could have pleaded infancy regression as a defense to my acting out. DB says, I don't know what happened to me. I don't think anything as bad as some of what you do, but why do I feel so bad? DB, I'm glad that my mom went out of her way to write a letter to explain what happened to me, but something happened to you. If you feel really bad and you're on these YouTube videos, something happened. Something happened. Kimberly Blair says, my mom also regularly left me in the care of my dad while she went off to play bridge with her friends, even after she found me with 4 sleepers on, screaming my head off and drenched in sweat. Man. And my dad was passed out drunk. Sarah says she found the wonders of Xanax and took 2 on the way to Florida and slept all the way to Tennessee. Some folks are against using Xanax, and there's nothing wrong with that. It probably, if you could meditate and exercise and do yoga and not need Xanax, and that's better. But I got to tell you, I benefit from one from time to time. Jeffrey says, my core wound is projection. People, parents, and others forcing their idea of who I am on me instead of seeing me as I really am. I wouldn't, Jeffrey, I wouldn't call that a core wound. The core wound there is, the core wound there is shame. And then, I get it that you're an object of projection and that they don't see you. But the reason it bothers you and gets under your skin is a sense of shame. Sergio, I think my core original wound is that my emotions were not validated when I was a child. And as a result, I have problems interacting with people and I isolate myself. Sergio, I could have written that myself. My emotions were not validated as a child. And sometimes you guys maybe wouldn't think it. You might think that I'm an extrovert. I'm very much an introvert. And sometimes I do have problems interacting with people and I do isolate myself. Jackie, I appreciate you giving commercials to have people subscribe to the channel. Yay for Jackie. Chris says, what is attachment disorder versus attachment trauma? Pretty much the same thing. It's like as little babies, uh, we it's like we were trained. It's like we desperately need attachment. We need attunement. We need at least one parent who knows what we need and always knows what we need, and they're almost always right there, Johnny on the spot, ready to take care of us. And if we didn't get that as an infant, we're profoundly broken. I can tell people who have attachment disorders, who um, uh, didn't attach with a parent as an infant. When I meet them, there's a rawness and a primitiveness to them. Soren says we've been going for 58 minutes. I wish I could go longer tonight, but we'll wrap up here in, I'd say, 5 or 10 minutes. I really, this has been a wonderful show. It seems like there's been a lot of new people on the show. There's been a lot of really good support amongst the comments for each other. I love it. I love it. My shelter is strong. It says, is it just the way I am that I can't cry? Well, it is the way you are now, but it's not how you were made. When a little kid falls and scrapes their knee, what do? They cry every single time. You won't meet a little kid who isn't going to cry when they scrape their knee. So, but Mother Nature then gives us really strong psychological defense mechanisms, and what do? We learn how not to feel. We learn how to numb out. So he or she says, so normal healing people can cry. Yeah. Uh, uh, if you're if you've been shattered and you have complex PTSD, and your feelings have thawed out and you've done some recovery work, you can cry, and it's just not a couple of sniffles. It comes from your belly, and it comes in waves. You may cry for 5 minutes and think you're done, and then comes another wave, and that flows through you. And then comes another wave, and that flows through you. And then you just keep going until you're done. Jackie says, I've been at the point where I could not cry, and then all I did was cry. I learned that this is part of the healing process. Jeffrey Sherman. By the way, Jeffrey, I haven't seen your name before, so welcome. Welcome all to all the new people. He says, I felt like I didn't matter. I actually remember telling my mother to her face, you don't even know I exist. That's sad. Sarah says, when she hears the song Ain't No Sunshine When She's Gone, she cries every time I hear it. I sing that song when I'm away from Renda, because she's sort of my sunshine. Jackie has a question. Mark, is it normal for a parent to say, shame on you? Jackie's throwing me layups here. It's something that people used to say, I think, a lot more than they say it now. We know better, for the most part, to say that. I'm sure a lot of us grew up having that word used, shame. Soren says, the baby is pre-moral. It can't make moral choices, although we are responsible for the things that we do because we are adults. Heather C. Music can help me, but it can also be a trigger. You know what triggers me is loud music. Um, it's been 4 years, and Renda likes to rock and roll, and she likes to, when she's driving, she puts on loud rock and roll and she gets down. But when she's riding with me, she knows she either needs to turn it off or turn it down real low. But we've gotten to where we can play a little uh, old, gentle pop music and put it on low, and I can enjoy it. Jackie says, subscribe. DB says, thank you, Mark. You're welcome, DB. Amy says, words can be violence. That's a good comment, Amy. Words can be violence. My shelter is strong. She found it on everydayhealth.com. People who live with clinical depression or anxiety disorders are less likely to feel better after they've had a good cry. That's interesting. Clinical depression is a whole different thing than complex PTSD. That's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the wound. Okay? The wound to our hearts and our souls. Those wounds come from deep inside us, and it's really not clinical depression, and anxiety is just one of the symptoms of complex PTSD. Jackie says, Mark and Renda, have you ever thought about having a family tree counseling mug or t-shirt? We had some shirts for the staff back in the day that had the old family tree logo on it. Gilligan says, I usually don't feel better after crying at all, but I thought I had a handle on my depression. DB says, the patterns are so clear to me now. The older you get, you can really see it. That's true. As you get older, and as you get wiser, and as you've been through more therapy and more recovery, man, I wish I could go back to being 25 and knowing what I know now. Life would be different, I believe. Soren says, everybody thinks that I'm an extrovert too, but I find that hysterical. Half the time I want to run away from people as they drain all my energy. But he loves cities and the restaurant selection. Well, we're gonna wrap up. Denise says that she applauds our moderators who did a great job. Yay for the moderators with their wrenches. Kelly Wood, it's great to see you again. Chris James says, can you give Mark a big hug for me, please? I assure you that I'm going to get a big, lovely hug from my loving wife. Lady Love, this is my first time joining a live show. Thank you all for all you do. Hello, everyone here. My apologies for not being more vocal. I'm new here. Lady Love, yay. Thank you for checking in. Thank you for saying hi. Welcome. Crying is a gift, DB says. Somebody's stream was frozen. I don't think mine is frozen on this end, but maybe I missed it. Okay, so in actually next week, there's been a change to our schedule. Normally we meet every other week, but next week Jerry Wise is going to be here, the 23rd, right? So yeah, today's the 16th. Jerry will be here on the 23rd, dropping knowledge on you all, and then I think we're going to be off. Renda and I have an anniversary coming up, so we have a show next week on the 23rd, but I think then we're going to be off for a couple of weeks. My shelter is strong. I think my lack of ability to cry, except during sad parts in a movie, is part of my personality. I still feel pain in my heart. Will literally ache when feeling emotional pain. Maybe that's my cry. I think that's a form of crying, is having ache in your heart. Thank everybody for the kindness and the welcoming to the new people. Lisa Bellavance, welcome. She says, I'm teaching children that they have so many wounds that trigger mine. I restrain myself, but I'm numbing out every night with video solitaire. Oh, sorry. So, everybody, Jerry Wise next week. Happy Easter to everybody coming up this Sunday. Martha McCrum is jumping in at the end, says, Hi, Mark. I look forward to rewatching this later. Hope you're doing well. You seem a little sad. I am a little sad. I'm going through a season of healing my core wound. Lucky me. But it's just part of the deal. This is something that surfaces from time to time, and it's okay to admit that and to cry about it and to put one foot in front of another. Yeah, we got married on May the 7th, and this is anniversary number 2. So I love you guys, and I really. Oh, okay. So Jackie is saying, Mark, don't you have a big 60th birthday? On June 17th, I am staring down turning 60. Man, that sounds old. I can't be 60, can I? Yeah, so that has me meditating and looking forward to just a different way of being in the world. So I love you guys. I'm going to sign off for now. Jerry will be here next week. Thank you for listening tonight. Thank you for your love. Thank you for excellent questions. Thank you for supporting the new people. And thank you for your love and support for me. Kelly says 60 beats the alternative. True. All right. God bless you guys.